The world did not end with a bang. It ended with a quiet hum, then silence. Imagine this. You wake up on a Tuesday morning. The sun is shining. The birds are singing. Everything looks normal, but something feels deeply wrong. You reach for your phone. The screen is blank. Your internet is down. No signal when you try to call. You walk to the nearest ATM. A crowd. A dark, lifeless screen. The machine is off. All the machines are off. Money, the ghost that powers our world, has vanished overnight. This is not a scene from a disaster movie. It is a thought experiment, not a slow decline, not a period of high inflation. A switch is flipped. One moment, the dollar is the bedrock of global finance. The next, its value is zero. The numbers in your bank account, the retirement fund you carefully built, the cash in your wallet, all of it, meaningless paper and digital dust. The silence is the sound of the global economic engine seizing. The first reaction, confusion. People milling on the streets, faces of disbelief and dawning fear. Shops locked because owners don't know what to ask for. A loaf of bread has no price. A gallon of gasoline has no price. The web of trust and value has been severed. The invisible language, dollars and cents, erased. We are all strangers now, learning new rules. What would you do in that moment? If this thought experiment grips you, like, comment, and subscribe. It helps more minds find IfVerse. Before we explore the chaos that follows, it is important to understand what money truly is. At its core, money is not wealth. It is a story, a shared belief. It is a system of trust that allows a farmer who grows wheat to trade with a doctor who sets bones without them needing to directly exchange wheat for medical services. It acts as a middleman, a universal scorecard that everyone agrees has value. This shared belief is what we call currency. For centuries, this value was tied to something physical, like gold or silver. You could, in theory, trade your paper notes for a lump of precious metal. This was called the gold standard. However, the US dollar and most modern currencies are what we call fiat money. The word fiat comes from Latin, meaning let it be done. Its value is not based on a physical commodity, but on the trust and confidence people have in the government that issues it. The dollar is valuable because the United States government says it is. And because over 100 million people, countless businesses and governments around the world agree to accept it as payment. It is a collective agreement, a social contract on a global scale. This system has allowed for incredible economic growth and complexity, creating a world of instant transactions and global trade. Think of it like the rules of a game. As long as everyone agrees to play by the same rules, that a green piece of paper with a president's face on it is worth a certain amount of goods, the game works smoothly. Players can trade, invest, and plan for the future. But what happens when the main rulebook is suddenly thrown into the fire? The game stops. No one knows what their pieces are worth or how to make the next move. The entire system relies on the promise that the money will be worth something tomorrow. When that promise is broken, the trust evaporates and the entire structure collapses. This is why a dollar collapse is so much more than just a financial crisis. It is a crisis of faith. In the first 24 hours after the dollar becomes worthless, the world does not descend into immediate, fiery chaos. Instead, it is defined by paralysis. The first and most visible effect is on the banking system. Digital banking systems process trillions of dollars in transactions every second and then simply shut down. They are programmed to operate with a valid currency. With the dollar at zero, their core function is broken. No wire transfers, no credit card payments, no stock market trades. New York Stock Exchange remains dark, Nasdaq remains dark, other financial markets remain dark. The titans of Wall Street are as powerless as everyone else. At the street level, The paralysis is more personal. You go to your local supermarket to stock up on food, but the doors are chained, cash registers locked and useless, credit card machines dead. The manager has no way to price items and no currency to accept. Euros. Yen. How would you determine the exchange rate? The store owner, fearing they'll be cheated, chooses the safest option. Do nothing. Sell nothing. Supply chains, orchestrated by a constant flow of digital dollar payments, have already been severed. No new trucks arriving to restock shelves. Travel comes to an instant and total standstill. Airlines grounded worldwide. Airline tickets, promises of future travel, are bought with money expected to hold value. With the dollar gone, all tickets are void. Fuel suppliers will not release jet fuel without stable payment. Trains stop running, buses halted, shipping lines idle at port. Borders become hard barriers. Customs and immigration systems that process fees and run on global databases flicker and die. Anyone traveling abroad is stranded, their dollars useless, their ability to return home uncertain. The world, once connected, becomes isolated islands. An overlooked consequence, the effect on systems of control. In prisons, tension rises, food deliveries stop, electricity supply at risk, water deliveries at risk, payment of guards' salaries halts. Within hours, guards and staff face a choice: continue to work for no pay in a dangerous environment, or abandon posts to care for their families. The state's ability to project power, to enforce laws, to maintain order. When the money stops, that power begins to dissolve. As the initial shock gives way to the harsh reality of the new world, society begins to fracture and reorganize. The first week is defined by the rise of a primitive, informal economy, bartering. People spill out onto the streets not to riot, but to trade. It is a desperate, inefficient, often unfair system. Your neighbor's vintage baseball cards are suddenly worthless. His small vegetable garden is a gold mine. The cans of soup in your pantry are now a form of currency. Skills become a new kind of wealth. A plumber, a nurse, a mechanic. Their abilities are in high demand, tradable for food, water, protection. This new economy is messy and local. A bottle of clean water might be worth a can of beans on one street corner and 3 cans of beans a block away. There is no standard of value, making every transaction a lengthy and tense negotiation. This is the first analogy. It's like trying to build a house without a ruler. You can put pieces of wood together, but nothing will be straight, nothing will fit properly, and the entire structure will be incredibly unstable. Without a common measure of value, the economy cannot build anything complex. It is reduced to simple, one-to-one trades. In this environment, some items become de facto currencies. Cigarettes, alcohol, antibiotics, batteries, ammunition. Gold and silver make a comeback, but only for larger transactions. For most people, a silver coin is too valuable for buying a loaf of bread. The real currency of the street is practical survival items. The focus of life narrows dramatically. Careers, mortgages, politics evaporate, replaced by a single pressing question. What do I have that someone else needs? This period also sees the rise of new forms of community and a darker form of tribalism. Neighborhoods band together for mutual protection and to pool resources. Block-by-block checkpoints emerge, manned by residents who eye strangers with suspicion. Trust, which was once automatically granted through the shared language of money, is now earned and given sparingly. The official government, unable to pay its employees, unable to enforce its laws, becomes largely irrelevant in daily life. Local leaders, some benevolent, some tyrannical, begin to fill the power vacuum. The world of the first week is smaller, harder, and far more dangerous. The collapse of the US dollar is not just an American crisis, it is a global catastrophe. For decades, the world has used the dollar as its primary reserve currency. This means that central banks from China, Germany, Brazil hold vast quantities of dollars as their national savings. When the dollar's value goes to zero, those savings are wiped out instantly. It is the equivalent of the world's piggy bank, holding trillions of dollars, being smashed to pieces. The financial wealth of nations vanishes in an instant. The immediate effect is the freezing of international trade. A German car manufacturer cannot sell cars to an American dealership because they cannot be paid in a currency that has value. A Brazilian coffee farmer cannot export beans to Italy. A Saudi oil tanker will not leave port because there is no stable currency to price its cargo in. The intricate supply chains that wrap around the planet, delivering everything from microchips to bananas, are broken. The global economy is like a complex organism, and the dollar was its bloodstream. Now the blood has stopped flowing and the organs are beginning to fail. This leads to a desperate scramble for resources, particularly energy. The price of oil, natural gas, coal, has always been denominated in dollars, a system known as the petrodollar. With the dollar gone, oil-producing nations must decide what to accept as payment. Do they demand gold, euros, Chinese yuan? This uncertainty causes a global energy shock far worse than any crisis of the 1970s. Nations without their own energy resources are cut off. This means no electricity, no heating, no fuel for transportation or agriculture. The lights go out, not just in America, but across much of the developed world and the developing world. Governments, facing an economic apocalypse and civil unrest, become unpredictable. Long-standing alliances fracture as nations turn inward, focused on self-preservation. Countries with strong manufacturing bases and natural resources, like China or Russia, might weather the storm better than nations dependent on finance or imports, like the UK or Japan. This power shift could lead to new geopolitical conflicts as nations jockey for position in the new world order. The collapse of the dollar does not just reset the economy. It redraws the map of global power, creating a volatile and dangerous new landscape. For months, the world has operated on the assumption that the dollar's collapse was a tragic accident. Economists on makeshift radio broadcasts theorized it was the result of hyperinflation. It was a catastrophic cyber attack on the Federal Reserve. It was a sudden, collective loss of faith. These were all plausible scenarios, a story of fragility and failure. But the truth, when it finally emerges, is far more deliberate and shocking. The collapse was not an accident. It was an inside job. It was a planned demolition. An anonymous leak, a digital package of documents, released to the few functioning information networks, reveals the plan. It was codenamed Project Reset. The documents show a secret consortium, a few dozen of the world's most powerful individuals and major corporations, operating outside any single government's formal structures, orchestrated the entire event. They saw the global economy, built on ever-increasing debt, as a house of cards destined to fall. Rather than wait for an uncontrolled collapse, they decided to bring the house down themselves, on their own terms. Their motives were a chilling mix of ideology and self-interest. They believed the old system was unsustainable, corrupt, and leading humanity toward environmental and social ruin. By erasing all dollar-denominated debt, mortgages, student loans, corporate bonds, national debts, they could wipe the slate clean. Think of it as a forest fire. Their documents argue some forests become so overgrown and diseased that the only way to allow new, healthy growth is to burn it all down. They saw themselves not as villains, but as a cleansing fire, clearing the way for a new, more controlled and, in their view, more sustainable world. Of course, this cleansing fire was not one they intended to be burned by. The leaked documents show that for years they quietly converted vast digital wealth into hard physical assets. Not just gold, not just silver, but control of the essentials. They bought up vast tracts of farmland, mines for essential minerals, water rights, seed banks, pharmaceutical manufacturing plants, and private energy sources. While the rest of the world was playing with digital numbers, they were quietly buying up the board game itself. When they crashed the dollar, they did not just erase everyone else's wealth. They made their own physical assets infinitely more valuable. In the chaotic aftermath of the reveal, the identity of the hidden winners becomes terrifyingly clear. They are not governments, they are not nations, they are a new global aristocracy, the architects of Project Reset. They cornered the means of production for food, energy, medicine. They are the new kings. Their wealth isn't currency anymore, it's tangible power. The power to decide who eats, who has electricity, who gets life-saving medicine. They emerge from the shadows not as politicians, but as administrators and as coordinators of the new world. Their grip is absolute because it's rooted in necessity. They offer a brutal bargain to desperate masses, stability in exchange for control. They issue a new private currency. It's a digital credit system tied to your identity, tied to your behavior. It's like a company store for the entire planet. You work for them in their fields or in their factories. They pay you in credits. Credits you can only spend on goods they produce in the stores they own. Your life becomes a closed loop, entirely dependent on them. The system is brutally efficient. With no legacy of old laws and no regulations, the administrators rebuild society as they see fit. They establish economic zones, highly controlled cities around resource hubs. To live there, you must accept their terms. There is no unemployment. Everyone is assigned a task. There is no crime. Every transaction is tracked. Dissent is not tolerated. After months of chaos and starvation, the promise of order is irresistible for many. They trade freedom for a guarantee of safety and a full stomach. The rest of the world outside these zones is left to fend in near perpetual struggle. Unincorporated territories, self-governing communities, barter towns, lawless regions. The gap between the haves and have-nots becomes a chasm. 6 months after the night money stopped, the world is unrecognizable. 6 months after the night money stopped, the world is unrecognizable. 6 months after the night money stopped, the world is unrecognizable. The initial chaos has subsided, replaced by a new, stark reality. The global population has been fractured into two distinct societies. Inside the economic zones, life has a rhythm and a purpose, albeit one dictated from above. Clean, efficient, and technologically advanced, these city-states are beacons of order. Their citizens have access to food, clean water, and healthcare. The price is total surveillance and a complete loss of personal autonomy. Every action is monitored, every credit spent is recorded. It is a comfortable, predictable, and inescapable cage. Outside the zones, in the unincorporated territories, life is a mirror image. Here, freedom is abundant, but so are danger and scarcity. Communities have formed based on shared skills, geography, or ideologies. Some are agrarian communes, rediscovering old farming techniques. Others are scavenger societies, living off the scraps of the old world. Ingenuity flourishes out of necessity. People learn to repair old machines, generate their own power, and create local systems of governance. It is a hard life, but one that is self-determined. The spirit of human resilience is on full display, but so is the constant threat of hunger, disease, and violence. The environment, ironically, has begun to heal. With the collapse of global industrial manufacturing and transportation, carbon emissions have plummeted. The skies over former industrial heartlands are clearer than they have been in a century. Rivers that once ran thick with pollution are slowly cleaning themselves. It is a brutal and unintended consequence of the economic demolition. The architects of Project Reset point to this as proof that their drastic actions were necessary, a painful but required surgery to save the planet from humanity's excesses. They frame the suffering of millions as a necessary sacrifice for the greater good. The new world is quiet. The constant hum of traffic, the roar of airplanes, the buzz of endless commerce. It is all gone. The pace of life has slowed to a walking speed. Information travels slowly, through couriers or patched-together radio networks. The global village has been dismantled, and people's worlds have shrunk to the size of their immediate community. History has been brutally reset. The grand narrative of progress has been replaced by a local story of survival. For some, it is a nightmare of lost potential. For others, it is a return to a simpler, more meaningful way of life. For a year, the world has settled into this new divided state. The administrators of the economic zones consolidate their power, their digital credit system becoming the dominant force in organized society. The unincorporated territories survive, but they do not thrive. They lack the scale and technology to challenge the new rulers. It seems the future is one of perpetual, technologically enforced feudalism. But then, something unexpected begins to happen. A new signal starts to pulse across the broken remnants of the old internet. It is faint at first, but it is growing. The signal is not coming from the economic zones. It is not another tool of control. It is a decentralized, peer-to-peer network built in secret by a coalition of programmers, engineers, activists. They have created a new form of digital money, a cryptocurrency that is not owned or controlled by anyone. It is a ghost in the machine, a phoenix rising from the digital ashes. It is a currency for the unincorporated, a tool for the stateless. This currency is designed to be untraceable, uncensorable, and completely independent of any central authority. It allows communities to trade over long distances, to coordinate, and to build a new economy from the ground up. It is the ruler that the barter towns were missing. Suddenly, a farmer in what was once California sells surplus grain to a community in the former Pacific Northwest, creating a new, independent supply chain. The architects of Project Reset are caught completely by surprise. Their model of control relied on a monopoly of resources and the means of exchange. They cannot shut down this new network because it has no center. It exists everywhere and nowhere, on thousands of small, hidden servers and devices. They can see the transactions, but they cannot stop them or identify the users. For the first time since the collapse, the people outside the walls have a tool that gives them leverage. They have a way to organize and to build a parallel society that can compete with the zones. The game has changed once again. The emergence of this decentralized digital currency marks the beginning of a new chapter, but not necessarily a happy ending. The future is now a contest between two powerful opposing ideas. On one side, you have the centralized top-down control of the economic zones, a system that offers security and stability at the cost of freedom. On the other, you have the decentralized, bottom-up network of the unincorporated territories, a system that offers freedom at the cost of security and stability. It is a global struggle between order and liberty, played out with new technologies on the ruins of the old world. This final state of affairs leaves us with a profound and unsettling question. What do we truly value more? Is a life of guaranteed safety, where our needs are met, but our choices are made for us, preferable to a life of absolute freedom, with all its accompanying risks and hardships? The dollar collapse did more than just destroy an economy. It stripped away all the complexities of modern life and forced humanity to confront this fundamental choice. The outcome of this struggle is far from certain. The new digital phoenix could empower a renaissance of freedom and cooperation, or it could descend into its own form of chaos. The story of the night money stopped is ultimately a warning. It shows how fragile the systems we depend on truly are. Our money, our governments, our entire global civilization, it is all built on a foundation of shared trust. If that trust is broken, whether by accident or by design, The world we know can vanish in an instant. It reminds us that real wealth is not in our bank accounts, but in our communities, our skills, and our resilience. The future is not written. It is a choice between building more resilient, decentralized systems or doubling down on centralized control. The simulation ends here. We are left looking at two possible futures, branching off from the single, cataclysmic event of the dollar's collapse. One path leads to a golden cage, the other to a dangerous freedom. Which path humanity would choose is a question that we can only answer for ourselves, long before the screens ever go dark. The story is a mirror, reflecting our own values back at us. What we see in that reflection will determine what happens when the next great test arrives. Where imagination meets possibility. You've been watching IfVerse, where imagination meets possibility. See you in the next reality.